Wow, this is actually pretty brutal. I already made this video like 4 times as a whole, already done. And then I noticed that I every time forgot one thing that is pretty much something you can't forget. At least forget to look at. I'm gonna get into that in a second, but otherwise I'm gonna do pretty much the same as I did yesterday with the Sony Xperia 10 and 10 Plus, so a little bit more off the cuff video. It will be a little bit all over the place since I have so much thoughts in my head, but I mean, yesterday you didn't seem to mind it. It actually got quite a lot of interaction, and obviously it got also quite a lot of dislikes for the main reason that I was pretty harsh on the Sony phones, because I have to say I was just pretty disappointed. And I mean, it's not quite as controversial as today, but I mean, Sony, some guys absolutely love it, some don't really like it so much, but it's not as extreme as it is, for example, with today's phone, the Samsung Galaxy S10. And by the way, I took the smaller one because I just prefer a smaller form factor. And I also have to say that I'm recording once again this video from the front-facing cam in 4K because it's possible with the S10 and it's onboard sound. I also want to make one thing sure though. A lot of people already released their review today. What I'm gonna do is not even release my first impressions. This is just my first observations because I wanted to quickly get a video out because I don't have too much time and just share about or talk about a few things that I've noticed so far, and actually more than I expected because the video actually will get quite long. I will try to keep it a little more compact this time, but there are just a few things that I've noticed, and I also want to make one thing sure. It's a 900 euro phone. I paid only 610 though because of corporate benefits and due to the fact that I didn't take the usually included Galaxy buds and got even more so off because of that. So even though I'm gonna review it as a 900 euro phone, what I'm going to also do in the review is tell you that especially in Europe the prices always drop pretty quickly. So that's something to keep in mind. So this phone will quickly become 700-ish, which will make the value better. And if I would, for example, judge this phone as 600, what I paid for, I'm super happy with it, even though, and that's something that I'm definitely gonna also discuss in the review, there are some weaknesses, there are some obvious trade-offs, and there are definitely some flaws on this phone. And I actually want to start off with that already, going through my normal categories. Starting off with the design and build quality. Build quality is spot on, nothing to really complain about here. Design, I mean, like I said, wanted to have the S10 because I wanted a smaller phone. Because today I also, for example, got the Xiaomi Mi 9, which after all is a noticeably bigger phone. Even though I have to say the S10 does not reach that in-hand feel. Because the Mi 9 feels so nice and thin, so high quality, and especially has amazing ergonomics, which unfortunately I never really found so much to be the thing on Samsung phones. Before, for example, the power button. It's placed for some weird reason like half an inch at least higher than it was on the S9 the case, even though the chassis size is the same. So I don't really know why that is a thing, but it is a thing. The next thing is the fingerprint reader. It's a pretty hot mess for right now. It's supposed to get better with updates, but it has to be a significant improvement because right now it is very unreliable. It is also very small and it doesn't give me a good experience. What is a way better experience is if you use double tap and then the face unlock, because that actually works pretty fast and pretty good, especially since I can then avoid the fingerprint reader and also the power button, especially to turn it on. But now here's the thing that I actually forgot to talk about the whole time, which is the punch out hole or whatever you want to call it. I have to say so far, I don't really like the fact that it's there in the way that it's there. Because even though I'm looking at it right now, I kind of managed to forget it in my previous videos because on the camera app you don't see it, it's black all around. But in normal situations you see it all the time. You see it in videos, you can't hide it. And what I don't really like so much in terms of, because when it comes to symmetry, is that you have a status bar with something a little bit up top, then you have the punch out hole, and then right after, because they said they cut it out exactly where they needed to, then they cut out, or then there is the status bar, and it just feels off because the punch out hole is touching the status bar on one side, and on the other side there are like 2 millimeters of a gap, and that just looks a little bit odd. So I would like to have seen this maybe a little bit more centered. Yeah, I think I will have to see what it turns out to be like after a few more days. Also, when it comes to the design, edge display, some people like it. Some people are okay with it because it gives you small belts on the sides, but some people definitely see it as a deal breaker. At first, it was one for me at the previous generations, but over the last few generations, the curve got a little bit more subtle. I got more used to it, the distortions got better and so on. So it's acceptable by now. But already actually talking about the distortions, this display, even though a few distortions are still there, and actually a little bit more obvious than, for example, on the Sony Xperia XZ3, the display is what makes this phone so great. It's the best display out there, only being rivaled with Sony's best right now, the XZ3, for example, or the one on the One. So that's great. And maybe the main reason why I actually went for the S10 over a lot of other phones out there was the next thing, the sound. The speakers stereo are super nice. They are nice, full, warm, rich, loud enough. I mean, they distort a little bit, but usually that's so far not really an issue. I will have to see that over the next few days. But I mean, I know the S9 speaker already. I was super pleased with that, and I should be just as much with this one. Now, performance is the one thing where I'm actually still debating if I should give it 4.5 stars or 5 stars. I also have to mention, I unfortunately have only the availability, at least officially here, to the Exynos version. And fortunately enough, I got the chance to use the Mi 9 a little bit also today, and it feels way snappier, way more responsive, quicker, a little bit smoother in general. So I kind of have to make a bigger distinction here. So 5 stars definitely for the Mi 9 with the S855, but this doesn't really feel any faster, at least not perceived so far, over the Snapdragon 845 phone or over the Note 9, for example. So it will get very strong for 4.5 stars, but I think I just have to make a visible gap. And I think the Snapdragon version obviously won't have that hindrance, but it is just a thing. And also talking about the Exynos and Snapdragon version, we are here out of luck in terms of performance, but we are even more so maybe out of luck because of battery life, which does not seem to be all that good. I mean, I was concerned because the battery isn't all that big, and especially the Exynos version are not efficient. And I mean, that was my biggest concern. I mean, for some, it will be a deal breaker. For me, it won't be that, but it will be a big disappointment because I don't use my personal phones that much. So it will get me through the day, but it's just sad to see that so many years after that, they still don't really deliver great battery life. I mean, I've just used it for about 50%, and it was the initial setup, also a little bit of camera use, which drains more, but it does not look promising. What might not look promising for a lot of people, which is something that I previously liked already quite a lot, is the software. You either like Samsung's UI or not. I mean, the Samsung's One UI actually hasn't changed so much. Some smaller changes have been done, but it's generally nice. There's not that much bloat there. It has a lot of functionality that I actually like to see. The Bixby button can be turned off right now. It can be also remapped pretty soon. But I always like the software. But what I also want to do this time is actually make a 1 month, 3 month later, 6 months later, maybe even a year later update to see if happened what a lot of people always told me, that it will get sluggish over time. And I want to give you those updates so you know if it's the thing. Because the last time when I used the Samsung phone for a longer period of time was the S7. I didn't really have that issue back then, but so many people see this as their biggest gripe on this phone, and I definitely want to keep you posted up on that. Now about the camera, well, I didn't get the time to use the main camera so far. I used the front-facing camera, as you can see right now, and as you can see also, it has beautiful autofocus, and it seems in good lighting conditions great, especially for video here in 4K with great sound. But what I've also, for example, noticed is I noticed that I don't really look that much into the lens, but actually more at the screen. But I noticed that if the situations in terms of light are less ideal, it would get kind of quite grainy, but they make the video so soft that you don't see the grain and the video gets quite grainy. But what actually surprised me even more so, I heard that the front-facing cam, the selfie cam, is supposed to be very good, which it kind of shows in video, but so far from the few selfies that I did, it doesn't seem to be that thing. I mean, the bokeh never was on a level of a Pixel or maybe of a Huawei phone or of an even Xiaomi phone in some situations, but the pictures that just don't look that spectacular so far. So definitely gonna have to check much more on that. But I mean, I have already heard that it's not as good as in the Pixel 3 or some Huawei phones. But the good thing about the Samsung camera is that it gives you great video and great photos. Maybe not the best photo, but pretty much amongst the best video. But as a whole, you don't really get that package all that often, because the Pixel might have the better camera for photos, but not for video. And it might be vice versa with some other phones. But this is also the next thing, which brings me already kind of to the conclusion of what is not supposed to be a review. But I mean, I've talked already so much about it, so I can already tell you one thing as a kind of pre-review. Getting all the things through. I'm super happy with the design, even though not so much with the ergonomics, the build quality. Super happy with the display. Super happy with the speaker system. The performance, I mean, I'm not impressed, but I'm happy. Totally happy with it after all. The battery life might be the most disappointing thing. The Samsung UI I like so far. The camera will be great. Now, It's maybe not really, maybe besides the display, the best at anything anymore. There are phones that feel better. There are phones that have maybe even better speakers, have better performance, better battery life, and in some parts also the camera. But the great thing about the Samsung phone is it packs all those almost best things along with the best display, pretty much the best speaker, and generally everything is pretty much the best. Let's just say it like this, in one package, which will be quite quickly actually affordable. And that is just something that you don't see. Usually every other manufacturer screws up one significant part. I mean, in this case, it definitely is the battery life. I'm not quite so sure about the S10 Plus, which I will order soon as well. But I'll definitely keep you posted on that. But so far, especially for what I paid, I'm super happy. But I mean, it was to be expected. It's not perfect, and there are a few gripes that I have with it, and it definitely has to turn out over time how big of an impact they will have on my overall experience. But as for right now, that's it. I hope you liked the video. Please let me know in the comments whatever you think about this phone, and if you hate Samsung, at least keep it civil, okay? Okay, until next time, bye. Let's turn this off.